And we say hello to the former Met, Art Shamsky. I believe it's been 50 years since you guys won the World Series over the Orioles.
Well, you're going to make me feel older than I want to feel. It doesn't feel like 50 years for me, Bill, because I live in the city, and every day somebody talks to me about that team, that special year, how great it was. Kids who weren't even born talk to me about that. They've learned it from their parents or learned something about the team from their parents or their grandparents. I think the guys that live outside of the New York City area who don't talk about it very often probably feel like it's really been 50 years, a long time. But for guys like myself and Eddie Cranepool's out on the island and Buddy Harrelson and guys that were in the area, it seems like it just was yesterday. All of us were so happy when we won, and our lives changed in October of that year, 1969. And to be part of that team was so special. And every day somebody talks to me about it, whether it's a current event that relates to the 69 Mets or they remember something about that team. But it's a very, very special team. And I tell people, and it's so subjective, but I really believe that the 69 Mets are probably one of the most iconic teams in the history of Major League Baseball. We weren't the greatest team to win a World Series. I'll never say that, but certainly what we did for the game of baseball, for the city of New York and the country at a time when the world was upside down. It's upside down now to some degree, but back then, I don't even know if you were born back then. I know you weren't born back then, but
I was.
The world was upside down. It was the war in Vietnam was tearing this country apart. The city of New York was going under. So many problems socially, financially, spiritually, morally. There was no good news. And what we did, and the Jets did to some extent, and then the Knicks did in May of '70, and during their season, is that we made people forget about their problems for a brief period of time. And they remember that, and they passed that on from generation to generation, and that's become so special that we were able to make people forget about their problems, and I think that's really the true legacy of that 1969 team.
And that team's going to be honored Saturday at Citi Field, and you've come out with a book, After the Miracle, The Lasting Brotherhood of the 69 Mets. Tell us about the book, Art.
Well, there's been so many books written about that team. I would venture to say there's over 50 in the course of all the years. And this is my second book. The first book was a book I wrote called The Magnificent Seasons. It was about that year in 68, 69 when the Jets won, and then we won in October of 69, and then the Knicks won in May of 70. And all three of us won for the first time, and a lot of people don't remember that. Nobody had ever won before, and then all three of us collectively really kind of brought people's attention and really made people feel better about their lives. But this time, with this 50th anniversary, I decided and sat down with Eric Sherman, who co-wrote the book with me, and we decided we wanted to write a book that was a little bit different. And we didn't want to do a game-to-game kind of replay of what happened that year. We wanted it to be really fan-friendly, like fans could kind of relate to what was going on. And it's really a book about camaraderie, friendship, and aging. You know, we've lost 10 members of that team, and there's still a nucleus around, but it's about all of us getting older, but still remembering that year and being so close and friendly with everybody. And that really was the crux of the book. We took a trip out to see Tom Seaver. This was 2017, and that really was the basis for the book. We went out to see him to kind of sit down and reminisce a little bit because he wasn't traveling anymore at that time. And subsequently, they've announced that he's not making any public appearances. But when we went to see him and talk to him and spend a day with him, it was just a revelation for all of us to sit down and reminisce about that year and how important that day when we won in October 16th, 1969, how important it was for all of us. And when we sat down, we realized that this was what we wanted to write about. We wanted to write about all those memories and all those important things that happened to us subsequent to that year, and how close we were as a team and still remain close. And I think that really was the basis of the book. And it starts out with this trip to California to see Tom, but talks to all the players on the team, and then finishes with the trip coming back. And it was bittersweet because when we left out there, we knew that some of us said if the Mets were going to do something or not do something this year, we might not see each other anymore. And it was such a special team that I wanted to write about it. And it came across really good, made the New York Times bestseller list, which was really nice. And so it was really a labor of love for me because the book itself is really kind of a true feeling about all the relationships we had on the team.
Well, moving on from sports is quite difficult, obviously, for the player. We face mortality twice. Do you think that because you guys did something so huge that it was almost setting you guys up for a bigger fall later on, personally, for each
Well,
guy?
all of us were in our mid-20s or younger on that team, and so when you get to the pinnacle of the world, there's always this chance that you might not make it again. And for some of us, we were out of the game relatively later, not after that. So I think it was good and bad. The fact remains that it was one of the most special teams ever to play in baseball. But there's not much more you can do once you reach that pinnacle, particularly here in New York City. But it was an incredible year for all of us. It was the Joe Namath of football and the Jets, and with us, and the Clyde and Willis Reed era of basketball, and the Busher and all those guys. So it was a wonderful time to be playing sports in New York City. But we were all so young, and we didn't win the next year, which was disappointing. And then, of course, we lost Gil Hodges, a manager who died at 47. And I do believe we would have won more championships with the Mets if he would have lived longer. But that's life, and so things happen. But that one year became so important in my life personally. I played 13 years. And for all intents and purposes, nobody ever talks about the other 12.
Well, you had your best year in '69.
I did, and even Eddie Cranepool, my teammate who played 18 years for the Mets, tells me when we talk about this, he said, I was on a pennant-winning team with the Mets in '73, but nobody really talks about those other years. Yeah. It's really about 1969 because it's so prevalent in people's minds. And maybe the stories have been stretched out a little bit. Who knows? But I've had people come up to me, like I said, who were not even born, who just remember that team was very special. I've had Vietnam veterans come up to me and say, gosh, thank you so much. They don't want anything signed. They don't want anything. They just want to say thank you for making me feel better about where I was, the worst place in the world at that time. But, I fired off my weapon, or I just jumped up because I was so excited that you guys won. And that's very special, because I've always felt that if you're a person that can make somebody else feel better about their lives in some small way, then you've accomplished a lot in your life. So I think all of us feel that way because we did affect so many people that year.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for dropping by, and enjoy what's going to be a very special weekend.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks a lot.
For more great videos from the MSG 150, check out right there. And remember, our show is on Monday through Thursday, 8 to 10:30 p.m. on MSG Network and MSG Go.